Hey, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking to help us multiply engagement and loyalty. I'm Rob Alvarez. I'm a consultant, I'm a coach, and I'm the founder here at Professor Game. And I'm also a professor of gamification and game-inspired solutions at IE University, IE Business School, EFMD, EBS University, and other places around the world. And before we dive into the interview, if you're struggling with engagement in your business and are looking to find out how to make your users stay with you, you will find our free community full of resources quite useful. You can find it for free in the links below in the description. So engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game podcast. And we have a special guest as always today. We have Ryan with us. But Ryan, we need to know, are you prepared to engage?
I am ready.
Let's do this. Let's go. We have Ryan Allen Jones, a transformational coach, mindfulness practitioner, and advocate for the power of storytelling in personal development. He's currently pursuing a doctorate in leadership and coaching, and his academic work complements his unique approach, which integrates tabletop role-playing games to help individuals uncover new facets of themselves, build social, emotional intelligence, and foster beautiful and satisfying lives. And his work bridges the creative and the practical, drawing on his experience as a certified personal trainer, yoga instructor, actor, and director. And through his innovative approach, he bridges the worlds of imagination and reality, helping others discover their potential and redefine their personal narratives. Ryan, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, anything we're missing, anything we should know before we get into the questions.
I would say that's pretty comprehensive. I have a 19-month-old daughter, so she's out on a play date right now. But yeah, excited to be here. Happy to be in the conversation.
If we're ever in the same city, probably our daughters can play together. Mine is from November, so you can make the math. It's just a few months away, so amazing. So Ryan, if we were to follow you around, shadow or whatever within legal and ethical boundaries, follow you around, try to feel what you feel in a regular day, week, or whatever that looks like, what would that feel? What would that look like? What would be the activities or things you're doing nowadays?
Yeah. So I'm a practitioner of the art of living beautifully. So I have a really big life. I have a family I have a sweet little daughter that I take care of, and I do bedtime with her. I have a group of really gorgeous clients that I get to work with who are really like developing themselves and moving forward in their lives. So the satisfaction of watching them kind of learn and grow. I take a lot of class. I'm in a doctorate right now, so I'm studying and reading and writing and reflecting. And I run a small business, so I'm on the computer and I'm having networking meetings and talking to people and then playing games here and there when I can.
Sounds familiar to me, academic, not on the doctorate side, I'm teaching, but and small business, young daughter. It sounds very, very familiar in my case. The engagers know these things already. I'm not going to dive deep. But Ryan, it seems like you, as you were saying, you're leading a beautiful life. And we like to sort of bring our guests to the real world as well, because sometimes when people hear that, it's like, oh, this person has it all figured out. And they've always been that way. They were sort of born into this fantastic world. And usually that is not the case, and we've had rough times as well. So we'd like to hear of one of those times when, especially using these TTRPGs or tabletop role-playing games that you use, that things were, you were expecting them to work some way. They just didn't, it flopped, or whatever that looks like. Especially, we want to be there in that story, see that first attempt at learning or that fail, how you came out of it, what did you learn? I don't know, guide us through that moment and that story.
Yeah. So this is maybe a little lower stakes, but I've been developing a bespoke RPG to function as a coaching intervention for my dissertation. So this is a game that I'm designing for the purpose of learning and growing in personal development. And I had I ran a play test with a group of friends, with a group of kind of like close people who are all either like coaches themselves and really well versed in the kind of personal development work, or are longtime game masters and game designers, and it was just a mess. It was so messy. And I realized one of the things I was trying to do too much. And one of the challenges as a facilitator of this kind of work is there are kind of like two really big hats you're wearing. There's the game master, which anyone who's ever run a game before knows that's a lot of like, it's a lot of technical skill. It's a lot of like paying attention and preparation and responding in the moment to people. So it's a big lift in terms of attention. And then as a facilitator, where I'm focused on the personal development of the people at the table, that's another big lift as well. So there's this learning curve that's very steep in terms of like learning how to facilitate the style of game that that my first couple of times out, I bombed. It was not good. Everybody had a fine time. I got positive feedback, but on the back end, behind the DM screen, I was just like, oh my God, how can I possibly do this? And so the things I'm learning from that are that the potential for partnerships between a game master who's running the game and then a coach facilitator who's kind of outside the game, maybe playing NPCs here and there to make interventions in the group, but sort of a partnership where two people can share that load is one possibility. The other possibility is increased kind of story structure for just to help me stay grounded, because I find one of my ideals is that the story is emergent, that the game and the story is this like thing that just happens between the players and at the table, and that it can come from the creativity. We don't need to decide a bunch of things in advance and have a bunch of story beats that we've already decided. But I think that for better or for worse, that ideal is high. It's a high skill. There's a high skill ceiling there, and so starting out having a more structured approach, I think, will serve me, especially in my dissertation and kind of, especially with newer players too, who have less experience role playing, getting people to kind of show up and be comfortable making something up in the moment that's connected to everything around them it's a skill. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. That makes sense. I'm going to make a quick pause here. Sorry about that. When you were talking, there was some sort of clicking sound. I'm not sure, like maybe you were doing something with your hands or something. Is there something that like your microphone, I'm guessing, is the one that is incorporated on the...
Yeah.
Is there? No.
Was it?
There. I just heard it. Did you hear it?
Is this? Yeah, it might be my
Then again, it sounded again. I don't know. Maybe it sounds every few seconds. I mean, I didn't really account for that. Because usually your hand, you're not moving your head. It was like you had your hands here. Like you did something and then all of a sudden, like you did here. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be my jacket. If I take off my jacket right now, is that...
Yes, it could be. It's opening and closing, maybe. Like doing click, click, click. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
You never imagine the impact of a small sound like that.
I know, it's wild.
People like, I mean, in the video, maybe you have your attention elsewhere, but you're listening, you're just walking like, what was that?
What the fuck is that?
What was that? And then, tick. Sorry about that interruption. Let's just
push forward. Thanks for catching it.
No worries. So Ryan, that was an amazing example of how you think about things in a certain way. You plan things out, and then, of course, don't get me wrong, I'm an operations professor as well. So there's no way you can find me in a situation where I don't have a plan when it's, business or teaching related, right? But every plan, when it hits the real life, there's always things that you need to be able to adjust, right? So there's a mix there between what you were saying of, the emergent storyline and all of that, which is fantastic. And you have to be prepared for that. But then also a structure that supports you so that emerging story can actually happen successfully, which is a very important aim that I'm sure you have as well. So, Ryan, how about we take a spin on that and actually go for something in the opposite direction, something that went great. You were using these TTRPGs, whether you created one specifically for this client or you were just using it for a certain purpose. No need to disclose any names or any private information if it's not necessary for you. But we want to be there. We want to see some of those success factors. What led you in that direction? How did you get there, essentially?
Yeah. So one of the core, and here I'll nerd out a little bit about the coaching model, because I'm gonna tie it in with kind of the how this work, how it functions, how this works essentially. So each of us has this set of beliefs that we formed between the age of 0 and 5 that form the structure of our perceptual matrix. So it's like what I believe about myself, what I believe about other people, what I believe the world can expect from me, and what I believe I can expect from the world. Wow. And this
that's
becomes
deep for a 0 to 5-year-old, right?
Yeah. So we make up this operating system essentially of beliefs and behaviors that form in that first 5 years of life when we're children. And then we run that operating system 90% of the time just because it's the most efficient thing to do, and the brain is very expensive to run energetically. So the transformation game is bringing, when we experience upset, when we get blocked in our life, when things aren't working, when we get these repetitive patterns, especially dynamics in relationships that are dissatisfying consistently with my wife, with my daughter, at work, with my friends, that sorry, realized the baby monitor was on. That these are the things, our beliefs are the things that are limiting our ability to express ourselves in a satisfying way and generate satisfying dynamics with others. So when we encounter upset, we can bring that into the consciousness in a conversation or through gameplay, through reflection, and then transform that, essentially choose a new belief to start to empower, to start to build evidence for. And so how that relates to identity is we think of ourselves often in this kind of fixed way, where it's like, this is how I am. And that identity is formed and it's not necessarily accurate. We don't necessarily see ourselves accurately. And so with games like Dungeons and Dragons, as I'm creating an avatar to play in the game, as I'm creating a character, I'm unconsciously projecting stuff into that character. And often it's stuff that I want to work, that I want that is uncomfortable, or that is aspirational, or there's unconscious stuff in there that I'm still working to process and understand about myself. An example of this is I was working with a guy, and he had created this character, and he was like this scrappy pirate, and he was like, I'm not a very successful pirate. I keep trying, but like my dad is this really famous pirate, and I'm just like always trying to live up to his expectations of me, essentially. And in a coaching session, I said, do you mind if I ask about your relationship with your dad? And he was like, oh, I didn't realize I'd done that. I didn't realize I totally like I have this relationship with my dad where I just think he's disappointed in me. And so this became an opportunity for him to work that dynamic more consciously. And we were able to use Dad, the famous pirate, as an NPC in the game and help him kind of redeem that part of himself and kind of like come to a more satisfying conclusion about who he was. And that's just one example. People often work, like I had a client who, like, two characters were having a romantic relationship in the party. So two of the players had decided to have a romance, and one of the players had kind of a reaction to it, and he shared with me, he was like, I think my character is asexual. Like, I think my character is not doesn't have any kind of sexual urge. And I was like, oh, like, interesting, very cool. Like, keep playing with that and see what happens. And then 5 or 6 sessions later, that player came out as asexual. And so this is something that he kind of discovered about himself through the character. It wasn't something that he was necessarily aware of in himself, or or hadn't named in himself. But as he was playing the character, he was making those conclusions as he saw how he felt as he role played that. So those are some examples of like how this can work.
Going deep, and it's like coaching, but also psychotherapy in many ways, right? Like there's uncovering of many deep stuff in there. So brilliant. I mean, amazing cases of using these TTRPGs for brilliant and huge purposes as well. Love it. Ryan, if you were, and I know you're working on a TTRPG, so this might be timely in a way. If you were to build a TTRPG or rebuild some sort of coaching session specifically for somebody using these games that you already have or out there, how would you approach it? Like, do you have a thought process for this? Do you have some system? Like, how does that work when a new client comes in and asks for something that you haven't necessarily done exactly that way before? Where does your thinking go?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to talk a little bit about the game I'm making now, I want to design systems that help players take agency over the story. So the players are driving the story. It's not the DM who's decided, here's the plot, and it's like the players are co-creating the setting from the jump. They're the ones deciding what kind of world we want to play in, what kind of issues do we want to be dealing with, what kind of characters are competent and going to be engaging with these issues. And then obviously the character creation process, like what's emerging in me that I want to bring into this game to work on? What's my personal growing edge as a person that I can then as a player bring into the game and work that into the story of the game with all the other players. And then the actual gameplay, the moment-to-moment gameplay, I have a dice system I'm working on. I'm really inspired by a dude named Anthony Kurza, who's a gamer and a coach out of Florida State. And he created a system called SAN. I think it's like simple action narrative, or like it's like a simple narrative system. But he does and I've adapted it into a 2d6 dice system where the middle values, so the kind of 60% of the values are player described success and failure. And then the outliers on either end are like GM describes the worst or best possible outcome. But essentially that there are no difficulty classes. It's random. When you go to the dice, it's success and failure. The dice are weighted towards success. You're going to succeed more than you fail, but you're going to fail an awful lot. And so learning how to engage with failure and engage with success in a way that continues to drive your story forward helps you keep going where you want to be going as a character, and kind of embracing mistake, embracing that kind of thing. So that's one example. Another example is I'm strongly influenced also by Fate. I don't know how familiar you are with that game.
Nope.
But so one of the core mechanical engines in the game is a relationship between, you get these fate points, you get these tokens you can spend on activating a character aspect, which is like a brief description of something that's essential about your character. So your character has 3 to 5 of these descriptors, and they can help you in a situation. And they can also draw you into danger. So you can spend a fate point to activate them to help you be badass in a situation and succeed. But they can also draw you into danger, and when they do, you get a fate point. So there's this economy of spending fate points to be badass, and then getting myself drawn into danger because of my aspects, and then getting fate points to spend to be badass. So that's kind of the gameplay loop. I'm interested in using that with a transformative angle. So any character is always going from one state to another state. So they have some kind of aspect that says, this character is going from street urchin to like competent burglar, So maybe this player is working with scarcity and trust and competence and that sort of thing. That there's this narrative of growing and changing over time, and the extent to which the player engages with that part of their character, they have more storytelling power, essentially. So the more they engage with that kind of essential thing that they're working on, the more they contribute to the narrative, the more fun they have at the table. So those are some of the systems I'm thinking about as I'm designing.
Sounds great. You're working on many interesting things. I'm guessing that's also part of your PhD. So keep at it. I'm sure the engagers would be excited to see where that ends, and even potentially if there's anything that you can share, we'd love to hear about it too. And Ryan, some people always like to talk about the silver bullets and so on. I don't want to go so far, but is there something that is like a best practice, something that you say, well, when you're using these TTRPGs or you're introducing these elements for something that is not just playing the game, for coaching or anything, what would be a best practice that you have observed in your experience?
I think even outside of game design, totally outside of game design, any player coming to the table can engage in this way by reflecting on, like, who am I? Like, what do I really want in my life? What's not working in my life? And how can I bring some of these elements into the character I'm making for this game? So intention setting as I'm creating the character, intention setting as I come into a game session, like, okay, today, I had this fight with somebody at work and it's really upsetting me, and it's really about, I'm feeling disrespected, and so I'm okay, respect. So I'm yearning for respect. So in this game today, I'm going to work out some of that stuff. I'm going to work on like getting respect, or what it means to be disrespected, or that sort of thing. So I get some additional playtime in this lighter environment. And then after the session, I can ask myself, like, okay, how did that go? What did I feel? Did I learn anything new? And then how can I grow? Like, how does what I learned influence how I want to behave, what I want to choose in my life? And then that can be a positive feedback loop. So that's something you can do. Obviously, it's easier if you get the buy-in of everybody else at the table, but it's something that you can do just for yourself. It's something you don't even need to share necessarily with anyone. It can be really beneficial to share that journey with people, and so that other people are looking out for you. They're like, oh, Rob's working on being effective, or being seen, or being heard. And so I'm looking for opportunities to pass him the ball. So it can be something I can do by myself. It can also be something that I can share with other people. But I don't even need. I could do it. We could play D&D. We could play, Mothership. We could play anything, and still be using these tools.
Cool. So it's a way of bringing, it's a two-sided blade in a way, right? So it's bringing to your zone of entertainment and of comfort for many people. You're also bringing some of the quote unquote heavier stuff to work on it, but in a way where you're also still enjoying the game. So it has that I'm bringing something heavy that initially I think people might have some people might have some reactions. Oh, this is my game space. Like leave it alone. But then it's like, well, yes, still your game space. You can still play it. And by playing, you're working on some stuff and discovering new things about yourself. So I really like that good practice as a player, which is something that no need to be a game designer, as you were saying. Anybody can just engage in this by playing TTRPGs or whatever games they are playing on as well. So Ryan, after hearing these questions, with all the things that we've been discussing, is there somebody that comes to your mind that you say, oh, I really like to listen to this person answering these kinds of questions on this setting? So essentially a featured guest for Professor Game.
Actually, I would recommend Anthony Kurza. I think he'd be a good fit for, and I can send his information your way. He's a college life coach, out of, I think it's Florida State University. And he's designing a narrative game very much in this vein, where he and I are very much kind of on the same path. And he works with a lot of college students. So he works with a lot of young people, kind of helping them move forward in their lives. So he's a cool dude.
Sounds definitely like a cool person to talk to as well. And Ryan, in that same vein, is there perhaps a book that you recommend people to read if they haven't yet?
Oh my goodness. So Uppsala University out of gosh, is it it's Finland or Sweden? One of the um one of the OGs, the academic OGs, who's done a lot of the early work on kind of like the use of games for transformation. Her name is Sarah. Dang it, I'm gonna need to just bring this up. She runs the Transformative Play Lab, the Transformative Play Initiative out of Uppsala University. And they just released a book that's free on their website. And it's essentially best practices for this kind of like, how do you design a game that can help people change and grow? And they go deep into the theory and the research that they've done, and they really focus on the Nordic LARP scene. So like kind of like realistic live action role play is kind of where a lot of their research is based, but the principles are cross disciplinary, and it's really generous of them to have made that available for free, and it's a really cool resource if anyone's interested in this kind of design.
Sounds like there's plenty to look into there, and being a free resource, it's easier to recommend it even further. And talking about this world of TTRPGs and using them with a greater purpose as you do, is there something that you would call or actually not is there, what you would say is your superpower? That thing that you do at least better than most other people. And remember, they don't have to be exclusive. Doesn't mean you're the only one in the world who has it. But it's that thing that maybe distinguishes you from the crowd.
Yeah, I think that like I'm really good at just being with people. And like the one thing I've really learned about the like coaching and leadership is that like people and groups are self-organizing, so that individuals and groups will orient toward the highest good for themselves, if you give them the space to do so. And so like simply being with people is a skill that I think is really difficult for a lot of facilitators and a lot of people who want to like teach or lead because they feel like they need to do something or do the group. And so a skill that I think I have a natural ability in and have worked quite a bit on is just like letting people be and seeing them accurately and empathizing with them and that sort of thing.
Sounds like very meaningful, especially for your work, the work that you're doing nowadays. And that's fantastic. And now we reach an actually difficult question, and it has to do with what is your favorite game?
Ooh. Gosh, that's tough. I've really been enjoying Mothership. I've been enjoying this kind of like dark, kind of apocalyptic sci-fi future kind of horror genre has been fun. A game that I would lift up as being really cool. I really like ninth level games, their polymorph system. And particularly, there's a game for young people called Venture Society, which is a game about talking animals. There was a war recently, and now you're in a time of peace, and the player characters are a part of a peacekeeping force they're going around and essentially like solving problems non-violently. And so it's just like they've got a really high value box set. And if you want a game to play with kids that's really about social emotional learning and that sort of thing, I think it's hard to beat that game. So that's something I would definitely plug as a really kind of innovative and good game.
Venture Society is the name of the company or of the game? I'm not sure I caught that one right.
Venture Society is the name of the game, and the game company is called Ninth Level Games, and they've got a polymorph system. And the system essentially is each character class gets one die. So you get a D4 or a D12 or D8, and so success and failure is about rolling for certain kinds of outcomes. So it's a really simple system. It's really easy to pick up. It's highly narrative, and I like those kinds of games.
Sounds absolutely brilliant. Thank you for that recommendation. Sounds very meaningful. as well. Is there anything that, of course, we're super excited to have had you here on the podcast to listen to all of the experience and knowledge that you bring in. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before, of course, letting us know where we can find out more about you and your work and so on? Any final words or advice, or we can just move on and say, we can find out more about me here and there?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say that one of the functions, a lot of people use games to escape, and you kind of alluded to that earlier, and that I think the potential for games to be used in a way that expands and enriches and deepens the meaning and the satisfaction that you have in your life is worth the discomfort of some of the dark, difficult things that we need to kind of go through in order to get to that deeper meaning, and that games can provide a really safe place to do that. And so even though this work can be uncomfortable, it's deeply and profoundly satisfying in terms of both what I get for myself as well as the connections that I create with other people through it. So if you're concerned about losing your fun, I can assure you that it's still fun. It's just also something else. So the style play is additive to your fun as opposed to kind of like a contracting around the fun.
Amazing, deep and amazing for sure. So Ryan, where can we find out more about all that amazing work that you're doing, about you, I don't know, social media, webpage, or many of these as well?
Yeah, I post pretty consistently on Instagram. I have a website. I'm still in the process of, in the next couple of years, I'll be moving toward doing more workshops. Although I am going to be at Gen Con this year. If anybody's going to be at Gen Con, I'll be doing some games facilitation and workshops there. But keep a lookout for my dissertation and follow me on Instagram.
Amazing. Again, Ryan, thank you very much for sharing your insights, your knowledge, your experience. However, Ryan and Engagers, as you know, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Hey Engagers, and thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast. And since you're interested in this world of creating motivation, engagement, loyalty using game-inspired solutions, how about you join us on our free online community at Professor Game on School. You can find the link right below in the description, but the main thing is to click there, join us. It's a platform called School. It's for free, and you'll find plenty of resources there. We'll be up to date with everything that we're doing, any opportunities that we might have for you. And of course, before you go on to your next mission, before you click continue, please remember to subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.